Right then, pull up a chair, grab a pint, or a cup of tea if you're feeling proper. 'Cause today we're riding shotgun with the most infamous brotherhood this side of Jesse James, the Dalton Gang, outlaws of the American West, or as I like to call them, lawmen turned lads gone mad. Imagine three brothers, decent lads from Kansas, riding horses faster than your uncle runs from his bar tab, armed to the teeth, and somehow thinking robbing two banks at the same bloody time was a good idea. Spoiler, it wasn't. This is the story of Bob, Great, and Emmett Dalton. From lawmen to legends, from deputies to dead men. Strap in, because it's all shootouts, mustaches, and some proper frontier chaos. So here's the thing, the Daltons weren't born wild. They were Kansas kids, raised in a family that wasn't exactly criminal royalty. Their dad was a farmer with a bit of a temper, and their mum probably just wanted them to sit down and behave. But these boys? Oh, they were born with itchy feet and a healthy disrespect for authority. Funny twist. They started as lawmen. That's right. Grat and Bob Dalton were US deputy marshals, actual badges and all. Their older brother Frank, also a marshal. Until he tried to arrest some folks and got himself very much shot in 1887. After that, the younger Daltons had a bit of an existential crisis. And by that, I mean they traded in their badges for bandanas and shotguns. Moral clarity. Let's call it grief-fueled chaos with a side of screw the system. Once they crossed to the dark side, they didn't do it halfway. The Daltons teamed up with some seasoned criminals. Dick Broadwell, Bill Doolin, yes, that Doolin, and a rotating cast of trigger-happy lads looking for coin and clout. Their resume? Train robberies, bank heists, and enough dramatic getaways to make Butch Cassidy jealous. Their edge? Knowing how lawmen thought. They'd been on the other side. They knew when patrols changed shifts, how to read wanted posters and how to pick targets like they were choosing toppings at a pizza joint. They operated mainly across Indian Territory, today's Oklahoma, and were basically like the Amazon Prime of banditry. Fast, efficient, and often unwanted. Alright, here's where the pint glass really shatters. October 5th, 1892. The Daltons stroll into Coffeyville, Kansas, home turf mind you, with a brilliant idea. Let's rob two banks at the same time. Mate, number just. No. Wearing fake beards and bad attitudes, they split up and hit both banks. But here's the twist. Someone recognised them. Like, "Oi, aren't those the Dalton boys?" And suddenly, the townsfolk are arming themselves like it's the Alamo. Gunfire erupts in the street. It's chaos. Horses bolt, windows shatter, and people dive for cover like it's half-off whiskey night gone wrong. By the end of it, Grat, Bob, and two of their crew are dead. Only Emmett survives, riddled with bullets but somehow still breathing. They shot him 23 times, and he lived. That's either bad aim or pure frontier stubbornness. He gets sentenced to life in prison, but ends up serving 14 years, and then, wait for it, becomes a writer. Because of course he does. By the way, get this before all this went sideways. Bob Dalton once told a reporter, "We'll beat Jesse James at his own game." And, well, they tried. But Jesse robbed trains. The Daltons robbed logic. Now, if you've heard of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, you know they were basically the FBI before the FBI existed, with a penchant for moustaches and dramatic hats. The Pinkertons had the Daltons on their radar like a hawk on a field mouse. Surveillance, informants, undercover agents. These guys didn't mess around. They weren't just hunting outlaws. They were building criminal dossiers like it was a Victorian LinkedIn. The Pinkertons were key in tracking the gang's movements, and their rise mirrored the gang's downfall. While the Daltons leaned into violence and bravado, law enforcement was getting smart, methodical, and just a touch vindictive. And you can't talk about the Daltons without touching on how they were romanticised. Newspapers painted them as tragic anti-heroes, symbols of defiance in a world being swallowed by barbed wire and railroad tracks. They were part of the great American outlaw myth, a narrative that says, yeah, they robbed banks, but weren't they kind of cool about it? No, they were not. They shot people. They made townsfolk dig graves. They weren't Robin Hood. They were more like if Robin Hood robbed you, kicked your dog and burned your wheat. And yet, the legend persists. There's Dalton-themed saloons, books, even movies. So let's get serious for a moment. What was their goal? Money? Sure. But also respect. Not just from fellow outlaws, but from society. They wanted to be remembered, feared, maybe even admired. But here's the kicker. They had no real moral clarity, no noble cause. Just a downward spiral of, we can get away with it, until they didn't. Emmett, the lone survivor, even admitted later that the gang's downfall was due to arrogance. They flew too close to the sun, except the sun was Coffeyville, and the wings were bad disguises and terrible timing. In the end, the Dalton Gang wasn't built to last. They were a flash of chaos during a time when the West was starting to close its lawless doors. The frontier was being tamed, and the age of the outlaw was fading. Still, they carved their names into history, not because they were clever, but because they were bold. Foolhardy, perhaps, but undeniably bold. So here's to the Dalton Gang. Lawman turned legend, chaos incarnate, and proof that sometimes the wildest horses run straight into a barn wall. Stay curious, stay sharp, and stay just sober enough to remember it all. This was just a swig of history, and if it wasn't in your textbook, it bloody well should have been. And before you go, do a brother favor and like, share, and subscribe.